All right. Happy Friday, everybody. I am here with our guest today, Henry Mascot of Curacao. The topic for today's show is AI and software exploring the limits. And our tagline is similarly, AI and software as a pathway to driving insurance inclusion in Africa. Henry is the co-founder and CEO of Curacao. He's a growth and product executive who has experience working in the finance, education, and healthcare industries. And he's passionate about driving massive social development using technology. So welcome to the show, Henry.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and happy Friday, by the way.
Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Yeah, gonna go do some fun. Yeah.
You're in Nigeria, is that correct?
Yes, I typically live in Nigeria. I'm not in Nigeria right now because I travel quite a bit. But yes, obviously.
That's where you're based?
Yeah, that's where I'm based out of Lagos. Yes.
Okay.
But again, obviously, as the company is pretty much growing, so I spend my time a lot in other places in some of the other countries where we have presence. Yeah.
Where do you frequently visit?
So places like Uganda. So we have clients right now in Ghana, Uganda, Nigeria, and then we're trying to get into Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, and like some others, 3 or 4 other countries. So I have a bit of it. I have some team as well, and then in Europe, so in France, a bit of UK. Okay. So I also spend some time in those places as well.
I see. I'd say probably 80% of our team is based out of Nairobi, Kenya. So really? I cannot wait to go visit. I'm counting down the days until we can go visit. So
where are you right now?
I'm in Colorado, near Boulder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm very much looking forward to it. But let's jump in. So give us an explanation of what Curacao does. Kind of explain it to us like we're 5 and help me understand what you guys do.
Wow, I haven't gotten that before. Explain it like you explain to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Woo!
Break it down.
No pressure here, bro. No pressure, bro.
Right.
All right. So at Curacao, right, what our mission is to be able to. So our vision, right, as a company, as individuals in the company, obviously for every company is made out of individuals, and then the vision for the company is mostly that of the co-founders and stuff. So for us, we want to see a world where people are economically prosperous, right? So especially people who are from the part of the world where I'm from in Africa, people in emerging markets, right? Because the economy is growing, so we just want to see people who are economically prosperous, right? And we started out in insurance because we believe that as people are growing towards prosperity, as you're getting empowered to a reasonable extent, then any risk that happens can set you backwards, right? And then being from the continent, I was born and I grew up in the continent, things can happen that sets you all the way backwards, when you start from scratch, right? So we started out from healthcare insurance because it's one of those big, high risk areas where a father could get into an accident and he spends all his savings trying to take care of that mess, and then he loses the savings for his kids' school fees, and his family just falls back all the way into poverty, right? So we think insurance is a massive value add to the society because it protects those families, right? Low income, mid income families.
Yeah.
Something happens to you, you don't start afresh, right? So we started out from Curacao from insurance because we thought that if we can create some value here, then we can have massive ripple effects and people's prosperity and economic empowerment, right? And why insurance is, right now, penetration of insurance in Africa is somewhere around 2%, right? So
2%?
2%. So again, you can look at this in varying ways. So there's looking at it as penetration based on the population of people in the country, people in these countries. But again, this 2% is typically looked at as the GDP, as the amount of premiums to GDP, right? So it is low, but it's mostly low in other places. So for instance, in the US and in Europe, that number is at somewhere around 6% to 10%. But again, the GDP in these countries are also much higher as well, right? So, but in a country like Nigeria, the number of adults that have insurance probably somewhere around 1%, right?
Oh my gosh.
So,
And are you talking,
so,
so right now, are you speaking about vehicle insurance or health insurance or all of
so
the
this is, so again, this is all of the above. But again, when you
Mhm.
start getting into them one by one, like it's much smaller number. The health insurance, like
Oh,
it's maybe
wow.
like a 2% is guy, like, so
Wow.
because again, like, car is like some sort of like, in this market, some sort of luxury for like middle class,
Mhm.
but like health, let's start from health. Like everybody needs to have healthcare. So this is the background. I wanted to give you that backstory on
That's
which we
helpful.
started QSL, right?
Yeah.
So any impact we make to increase this number is massive impact for families, right? So what we do at QSL is we're building infrastructure, we're building digital tools to help insurance companies and their stakeholders make this market grow larger, right? So reach people who are currently not reached. So one of our first products, which is QSL Claims, right? If you go to our website, that's the product you will see, which is our claims management and fraud detection solution. Uses AI to sort of like reduce the amount of money the insurance companies is losing to fraudulent claims. And the idea is if you can save them from making losses, maybe they can be profitable and maybe they can be more innovative in the kind of products they create. Because
That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
when you're in a sinking ship, right? When you're drowning, you can't think of other things to do, right? Because you're like trying
They
to
have
save
to have the
yourself.
incentive to do business there.
Yes, of
So
course.
if you give them the incentive to do business there, then the number of people that have coverage increases, I'm sure, exponentially.
Increases, exactly. So
Very
that's our
smart.
point. Yes.
Wow. I have a feeling that it's not really about the business for you as much as it is your passion to do greater good.
It is the impact. Yeah, it
Like
is the
that
impact for me.
obviously shines through. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I feel like that well, speaking for myself, I take a lot for granted being in the US. I mean, we think of things that like insurance as just common, right? Like, so the idea of me not only wrecking my car, but destroying somebody's Mercedes or something and having to pay for that and bringing me not down to zero, but to like negative numbers, like that's a
Negative numbers,
significant
Mike.
risk. Yeah, I
That's
don't
normal,
even
man. Like
think
that's
about
our
that.
reality. Like, dude,
Hmm.
that's our reality, man. Like that's our reality. Like you wreck
Hmm.
somebody's car, like you fix it, or the person fixes it, like you fall sick. A friend of mine, sad story, a friend of mine just like DM me, and like his mom like has like this health thing, and he's gonna pay all the bills. Like, and it's like something chronic and something bad that's gonna cost him a lot of money. So yeah, so that's the reality like most people live in this part of the world, and we're trying to fix that. Yeah.
So tell me, this is going to go maybe off topic a little bit, but you mentioned the term emerging markets, and like I said, 80% of our staff is in Kenya, and we have a gentleman on our team named Jeff, and he was telling me that, and I hope I quoted this correctly. I think he said that the literacy rate is like 30%. There's because of all in terms of people in Kenya that speak English, because there's multiple
Probably
different
can
languages.
write
So
and read it as well. Yeah.
yeah. So our team is quite technical. Most of them have computer science degrees. They're very technical. They're very well spoken, very well written. And I thought, gosh, like the opportunity they have as compared to many other people in their country
Exactly.
is significant to be able to support their families and make a good wage.
Exactly.
And I'm curious, like, what does it take at the ground level to upskill, and especially young people, right? Like, so you think about like the slums in Kibera. What does it take to get people upskilled to the point where they have those skills and then they can work for clients remotely? Because the world is getting progressively smaller, especially with COVID. The number of online job opportunities is growing exponentially, but they've got to have those baseline skills, English proficiency and computer proficiency.
Yeah. So like, to be honest, like, because as you're thinking about this now, I'm thinking about Nigeria, right? And I don't know what that literacy rate is. I don't know, maybe somewhere around 40% or is much less. Because I grew up in Eastern Nigeria, and where I grew up in, and I think I probably grew up in some sort of privilege because I grew up like in middle class. So I went to a private school. I went to private, I went to university, we could pay for it. But I would think that, maybe most people in the city where I grew up in, I wouldn't say that they all have that, but like, let me just try to backtrack to the question you asked. What would it take to upskill somebody to that basic level, right? So obviously, like, the basic thing is like the person needs to have gone to has some level of education, right? So you should have gone to primary school, even if you didn't, maybe a bit of secondary school as well, which is what you guys call high school. And then from there, like, you don't need any technical. You just need a PC and somebody to train them, right?
Sure.
I didn't learn any of the things I learned about computers. I didn't learn any of them in school, right? I never learned anything about computers in school. By the time I got into my first level in high school, I was already helping my teacher teach people computer. So all this you can learn at home. So I would say that the biggest problem is just getting people to that place where they speak and write English, right?
Okay.
In most parts of, for instance, maybe some of the places you mentioned, in most parts of certain cities, certain urban areas, that is possible because people get to go to primary school and high schools. But thinking about it now in northern Nigeria, there are lots of people, millions and millions of people who don't have that opportunity. So if I start answering your question from their level, so people who don't even speak English in the first place, they don't have any schools, or because of the level of unrest in those part of the world, they don't really go to schools. That is much, much, much harder. It's a much harder problem for me to solve. But again, if I start from the cities that I grew up in, where I have basic level of education, then what people pretty much need is a computer. So any organization that is able to show up and do computer programs, computer teaching programs, and then I can see that people can get upskilled pretty quickly. And we're seeing a lot of that happening right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not sure if that's what you were asking. Though.
I don't think there is an easy answer. There's many ways you can go about it. It's a significant problem, but at the same time, that sounds overwhelming, but I also feel like we're making progress collectively, so that's
we are, right? So because the thing is, right, because I think it has become very obvious, even with the tech boom, it has become very obvious that technology, because for instance, imagine what's happening with Paystack, Flutterwaves, even companies like Arch, right? We're employing a couple of people. We did our pre-seed. So it's obvious that there's a lot of opportunity in technology to do empowerment. So I think people would see that and and there will be a lot of effort in training people who are not currently trained. But I think the biggest nut for me to crack is that level that's going from no speaking English to speaking English in some parts of Africa, which is foundational, right? That's the basic part, right? Because anything else on top of that, you can layer on, somebody can go to a Microsoft Word school for 6 months and be good, right? You don't need,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited about the future and the possibilities. I mean, on the one hand, it's overwhelming, but on the other hand, I love seeing the progress that is being made.
There is a lot of progress, right? And I think one of the exciting things I started to see as well, maybe I should mention this, is there's starting to be a lot of giving back of the tech companies, right? So you see a lot of programs where, I think I just saw one today, but there are a lot of programs, I think guys like Cowrevest design programs where they're taking people who have the basic computer skills and then they're layering on that tech expertise in terms of design. There are programs like hotels.ng internships, where I think in the space of a couple of years, they've been able to train hundreds and thousands or thousands of developers. So a lot of the tech companies here are starting to do things that they're not waiting for the government, because I think some of the biggest challenges that we've had in the past is just waiting for somebody from the West to come save you, or some government program. But we're starting to see people actually just give back by themselves. So these programs are going to have ripple effects.
It's the adage of teach a man to fish.
Yes.
Versus just providing for them. And that's such a richer model. Is that proper English? I don't know. That's a much better model, for sure. I want to know what drives you. You're a very passionate person. That's immediately obvious. What gives you that deep sense of passion?
Good question, bro. It is a simple question, but it's tough to answer. I think I've always been a passionate person. I've always been very passionate about the things I care about. I don't care about many things. I think maybe that's what helps. I don't do many things. A friend was asking me recently, a friend who has multiple businesses, is do you do any other business outside Curacao? Do you do it? Nope, just one thing, right? and so I think for me, right, so what happened to me is like, I don't know how this happened, but I think I was very clear very early on in my life what I wanted to do in my life. So I was very clear I was going to do business. I was very clear I was going to be technology, right? So it helped me focus from day one. So I was very, very channeled. But again, I guess from like my environment, like where I grew up, I was raised in like in a Christian home. So I started serving very early. So I started working in like organizations and like in things where I was just serving, right? I was just giving, right? I wasn't like, I didn't care about taking, so I was just giving. So it sort of like built that foundation where like I think about my life as like one big service. Like I just need to like create value for people, but do it by doing things that I care about. Like, so I care about technology, I care about business, but it has to be channeled towards like a greater good. So if you ask me what drives me, I think is those foundation, being like a very passionate person, be very focused on the things I do. So it doesn't let me like dissipate my energy. My energy is always focused on very few things. So it always comes up as a lot. And, just being raised to be like somebody who serves and like tries to make impact.
It reminds me of the story of Timothy in the Bible, and he was raised in a Christian home, and just from birth, it would just, not that that's what saved him, but it just soaked into him that way of life, that way of thinking. There's a richness there in being raised in that way. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yes, definitely.
That's great. So you're a pretty prolific writer, and one of the things that you wrote about is playing the long game. Do you recall that piece?
So when did I write that? Really? When did I write that?
That was on Medium.
Medium, playing the long game. Was that the EdTech one, or was that something else? Was that the EdTech one?
Let's see. FVS 46, the power of playing the long game.
Okay. Yeah. So again, this is about, so if you see the title of that newsletter, the title of the newsletter is FVS. So what it means is for value seek, right? So it's about giving. Like, so I started that newsletter because, I like to read a lot. Unfortunately, or fortunately, for you to be like a founder, like an entrepreneur, you have to learn very quickly. You have to grow a lot. So you have to read a lot. So I realized like my friends, like we're not all reading, like I'm like growing as much as I did. So I started curating like a weekly newsletter where I was making them read some of the things I read. So that's FVS.
Yeah. Let me refresh your memory. Let me read some of these quotes. This is good stuff. Yeah. So the greatest gains are found at the end of the compounding period. Yes. Another is, it is remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid. I think that's a Munger quote. Consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent.
Yes.
And then here's a good one. If you can't see yourself working with someone for life, don't work with them for a day.
That's Naval. Yeah, that's Naval.
That's Naval. Yeah. Oh, I love Naval. Yeah,
I can never forget that. Yeah.
Did you listen to that? There's like a 3-hour-long recap podcast.
How to get wealthy. I love it. That's my best podcast. That's my best podcast for life. Best.
Yeah, I've got that saved on my phone, and I play it maybe once a quarter or so. There's so many nuggets in there that are just absolutely amazing.
That's my best. That's my best.
So let's talk about the long game, because that's a favorite topic of mine. And probably it's near and dear to me because for a long time in different aspects of my life, and including business, I've not played the long game. And while I don't regret the different experiences that I've had, I think I've jumped ship too soon in past ventures. So I'm curious what your take on playing the long game. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So again, how I define my life, right, is one long purpose. So I start with like, there has to be a purpose for your life. So you have to define, so the same way you define like a company, what's the vision and what's the mission. So my life has a vision and a mission, right? And then that's the thing I do for the rest of my life, right? So that's the way I think about long games, right? So it means you have to be in something, like you have to pick something, and that's what you do for the rest of your life, right? So for me, that thing shows up in every single business I do. Right. So that's how long, right? So it doesn't mean I do the same business for the whole of my life. It just means that the foundational reasons is the same mission, right? Same mission, right? Same fundamentals, right?
Okay.
So that's the way I think about it, right? And obviously, so that's one thing I can say about playing the long game. And then something else I could say is do only the things that you're passionate about. Like, again, I don't, this sounds somehow when I said it out loud, because there's this thing, there's this article, I've forgotten what her name is, but it was telling people not to follow their passions because, you get passionate about what you do for long. But really, my definition is, when I'm trying to hire somebody in my company in Curacao, I try to figure out what are you passionate about, so I can hire you for that. Because that way, I don't have to make you work, because you love to do that. So you're just going to do the work. Like, you get
intrinsically motivated.
Yes, you see.
Yeah.
So, but when I hire a dude who wants to be a designer, and then I hire him to do marketing, like, he's going to get tired and he wants to go back to his designing, right? So when you tell me long game, right, and I ask me how do I think about long game, two things come to my mind. First of all, what's your long-term purpose in your life? What's your long-term vision? And that should be like interwoven in most of the things you're doing. And then what are you passionate about? Like, so they're two different things, right? Like, you can be passionate about like playing football, right? But playing football inherently doesn't make any impact in the world. It doesn't serve a purpose, right? So there has to be something, for me, in my own definition, something that impacts, right? That's the purpose. And then it's slightly different from the passion, but these things have to sort of like marry over time to make me have an impactful life, but make me enjoy life at the same time, right? So those are the two things that jump up to me for like long term,
That's so good. I don't know that I've heard that perspective. That's brilliant, where you're weaving in your mission, and that's the part that's long term. Well, let's get into the micro a little bit. So how do you decide on a business by business basis when the end is? And by end, I mean, maybe you put a team in place and you're just advising, right? Or perhaps you sell the business. Like, how do you decide that on a per business level when it's time to do the next thing?
Do the next thing. Well, I haven't gotten there yet. To be honest, Jim. I haven't. So I wouldn't be saying this out of experience, unless I've done a couple of ventures that failed or didn't quite take off, and I had to move on. So maybe if I talk from that experience, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't answer this question from a perspective of success, where it succeeded and I had to leave it and then move on to something else. So I don't have that perspective yet. But for the things that fail, it pretty much is obvious when to move on. Because if it's not working,
you got to,
because you got to figure it. But it really is difficult, Jim. Like, to tell you the truth, I have a couple of friends who are like, have been doing their businesses for such a long time, and have people who say, "Hey, man, you should move on from this." But I feel like, because for me, I'll tell you why I see this. For the first 2 years of Curacao, so I set up the company in 2017. For the first 2 years, there was really no company, right? It was just me and my co-founder, right? It wasn't really a company, right? We could have moved on by then, like could have tried a couple of projects, tried to sell a couple of things. When it actually became a company was in 2019. That's when we launched the product we had now. Before then, it was a couple of experiments, right? So, we could have moved on like 6 months after, like, setting up an entity and then trying a few products and it didn't work. We'd have moved on by then. But it is this thing around why did we stay? We stayed because we were doing what we love to do every single day. Because even if we left it, we'd have still done something like that. And it was making the impact that we wanted to see, right? So if you're a person and like it aligns for you that, of course, there's the metrics part, which is you've spoken to a customer, like you've validated that it's a problem, and then you're iterating on the solution and it's not working. And then you should probably you need to have metrics for evaluating whether it's working or not. And then you should move on if you figure out it's not working. But if something keeps showing you that something is working and is really something you're passionate about, then you should definitely stay. In the business we're in right now, right? We've tried to ask ourselves, what is the end game, right? So do we sell this? Do we IPO it eventually? And we have a couple of scenarios. I don't think you really know. I think people tell you that, this is the plan. Sometimes plans do change, right? So I was listening to some of these guys that maybe the Paystar guy that sold his company, and you tell he never planned to sell, right? He was building long term, right? And so Jim, to answer your question, I really don't know when to move forward. If you're succeeding, when to leave it for the next thing. So I would say if you become less passionate about what you're doing day to day, then you should definitely maybe like hand it over to somebody who's more passionate and just go do. Because when you're passionate about something, man, the fire just shows. Like you wake up every day, you want to do the work. Unless you're burnt out, then you should probably rest.
Yeah. Are you, so back to Naval's, I guess tweet storm and podcast. I don't know how long ago you listened to it, but do you recall him talking about the principal agent problem?
Principal agent problem. Through more like I listened to the whole thing a couple of times, so definitely I've done the podcast end to end a couple of times.
Yeah, and I think that's and jump in.
Please
here,
refresh my mind on
the
principle. I don't seem to remember the terms, but I remember the
yeah. So it has to do with accountability. The principal being basically the business owner, the agent being the employee, and having to do with accountability, and then creating a culture in which the agent, the employee, acts as a principal, acts as an owner, and that goes into
accountability one. Yeah,
like intrinsic motivation, being self-driven, being autonomous. Behaving as if they're the principal, the owner.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on that as a leader in your business, building a culture to get your staff to operate as owners?
Yeah. To be honest, Mike, like for instance, I just got off a call right now with one of my staff who wants to take a leave for like an exam she's preparing for. And she shows up on a Friday afternoon, and then she's requesting for leave for Monday for at least 2 weeks, right? So one of the things I said to her on that call is I'm disappointed because you're not thinking like a leader. Like, because how do you show up and like you want to take a leave for the next 2 weeks and you're just informing the team like literally the last day before the next? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So it makes me think that it takes quite a bit of time, right, to get. It will take a lot of training and a lot of time to train people who aren't like intrinsically leaders and intrinsically like proactive to have that agency, right? You need to be in an organization that the culture is like that, and you have to be in that organization for a while to be able to take that, right? What I found is that people who are like this, right, are like that, like So the young. So I didn't have to, I wasn't trained on how to be proactive. Like I was proactive by personality, right?
Yeah.
My co-founder, like nobody trained him. He hadn't done any other job like before me, like, so you wouldn't say that we were trained on how to have agency and be accountable and like feel like owners. If I was working in another person's business, I'll be as proactive as if it was in my own business, because it's a personality thing. It's an energy, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it requires, we have this energy in our organization, right? So we have, I'm proud of a couple of people. There are people like that. It's not their business, but like you see them like doing it, like, So I think that the best way to build this culture in the beginning is hire people who are like that. Like, don't train people who are not like that. Don't start with that. Like, first of all, build a sheep of people who are like that, and then you can start getting others so that they can sort of like have that rub off them, right? So I guess that's part of what I'll do more. Hiring. I have those people, but I realize that a few bad apples that we probably need to like.
Looks like we lost connection there for a second.
Yeah.
There we go. You're back. I lost you there for a second, Henry, but you're back.
Wow. Okay.
There we go. Okay. I think we're good now. Well, hey, that's good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. I completely resonate with that. I know we both have a hard stop coming up. I want to ask one last question, and that's from a viewer. And Velvet says, working on things you're passionate about resonates with me, but I find that I can get burned out. What do you personally do to prevent burnout?
Yeah, to be honest, I actually didn't know what it was, to be honest. I think I might be cutting a little bit. Am I cutting?
I think you're back.
Hear me well?
I think you're back. Yeah, we're good now.
Man, why am I cutting all of a sudden? Okay. All right. So to answer the question, so I didn't know what burnout was for the longest time, but I think I had quite a few of those episodes last year. So I think like, how do you prevent being burned out? Like, it's just like rest, like figure out like a scalable routine. Like don't sprint like consistently. I was listening to like something like early this week. I shared it with my team. Figure out what makes you happy, right? What makes you happy, and be deliberate about like doing self-care, right? So if you're a CEO, don't consistently like do the work that you have to do for a marathon, right? For the longest time. Like take breaks, right? Take breaks, take weekends off. Like don't work all the weekends. Like take weekends off. Me, I like to watch movies. I like to watch like 20 hours binge on movies. So sometimes I do weeks like I work through weekends, I work through, and then some weeks I just like close up my laptop and like just binge on Netflix. And then by the time I come back, I'm happier. And so like, man, like burnout is just like doing like work for the long. So just like don't spread yourself too thin, right? Give yourself breaks and do stuff that's fun.
That's good. Thank you. I appreciate
All right,
that.
Jim.
Well, we got to land this plane, Henry. I tell you what, when you're in the States next time, or when I'm in Nigeria, I'm going to buy you a steak. Let's go out to dinner. I'd love to chat more. This has been.
I should be in the States like sometime in November.
Are you serious? Really?
In Cali and then New York in November. So maybe we should sync. We should sync that.
I'm not joking. We have some clients in California, so I'm not joking. You let me know when you're in town, and I'll meet up with you.
I will.
It'll be fun. But hey, man, thanks for your time.
Having me.
You're welcome. Yeah. We're going to post links on our landing page. But what's the best way for folks to reach out to you if they wanted to say hello?
LinkedIn is the best. Twitter as well. LinkedIn on Twitter is the best. My email is henry@curacao.ai, so you can drop me an email.
Perfect. Great. Well, thanks so much for your time. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.